Looking good, George. I
You
like your
look,
pink shirt.
thank you. You're looking good too. How's the family?
Pretty good. We had the flu last week, but getting through it.
That's good. I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. And today at school is our college shirt day, so I got to show the kids where I went.
Oh,
So it
okay.
looks like we're live, gentlemen. So we're going to go ahead and get this party started. Thank you so much for joining me, Mark and George and Eric, and hopefully we'll have Bill online here soon as well. And thank you to anyone else who's watching. We look forward to hearing from you in the course of this call. My name is Matt Hensley. I'm Executive Director of Austin Classical Guitar. With me here is Eric Pearson, who is making sure that everything technological is working for us. He's also our Director of Curriculum here. So maybe we could just kind of go around the circle one time. We'll start with George, and then we'll go over to Mark, and then we'll go over to Eric. And maybe each of you guys could just kind of say kind of who you are, where you're from, what you're affiliated with, and kind of do a quick intro so people watching get a sense of who they're talking to. George?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for having me, Matt and everybody there. It's a real honor to be a part of this. My name's George Dean, and I teach in Canton, Ohio at Canton McKinley or Canton City Schools, but mostly at the Canton McKinley High School. Also, I'm an adjunct, run a program with at McKinley for Kent State University. And I help, we do a community outreach for guitar with, sponsored by the Canton Symphony Orchestra too. But that's why I teach guitar. That's my main gig is full-time guitar, thanks to you guys actually. So, you know.
George, what can you give us a sense of the size of your program, just so people get a sense of kind of what you're managing and maybe what you're looking at from a kind of a growth potential situation?
Yeah, so like every day I have on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I teach 5 sessions of guitar class during the school day at the high school. And then I teach one at an arts magic middle. I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that'll be 6 sessions of guitar. I have about, just at Canton City, 110 guitar students, maybe a little bit, maybe a couple more, and I've added a couple kids. So that's
fantastic, George. Thank you so much. It's a massive program, and I know you're also helping kind of within the district with ideas for setting up some additional programs. We may or may not get to that tonight because we got a kind of a specific focus tonight. But Mark, how about you, man, coming in from Modesto?
And check your mute button, Mark, your mic.
Okay, we'll come back to Mark as we try to get that audio going. Eric Mann, can you tell us just a little bit about what's happening in Cleveland?
Yeah, so we work exclusively within the city of Cleveland. Cleveland has the second highest child poverty rate in the U.S. for a mid to large size city. So there's great need there. The school system, the majority of the schools have no opportunity for kids to learn instrumental music, and they don't typically have opportunities outside of school to do so either, due to issues with transportation and safety and crossing neighborhoods and cost and all these other things that factor into this. So we're really working on filling that gap. We now have we're teaching over 200 kids a year in the city of Cleveland, and we started off with guitar classes, which we're still continuing with, and we've added a number of lessons. So over 10% of our kids get one-on-one lessons also, and that's been a pretty amazing thing. We've had some kids that have in a short period of time gotten to a pretty high level.
Amazing, Eric. So it's interesting because obviously with the classroom programs, you can go wide and reach a lot of kids in a beautiful way. But obviously, if you can apply those resources to a number of kids with individual lessons, then you can really go deep as well and see that massive change. Well, amazing work that you're doing in Cleveland. We've certainly seen the results of it. And so far we've heard from George Dean and Canton describing a large program in Kansas City schools, and I know he's got a bunch of auxiliary things happening as well. Eric Mann, representing Cleveland Classical Guitar Society, which is actually outside of the school district, but working within schools to make changes happen as well. And so let's see if we've got audio from Mark Davila in Modesto, California yet.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm in Modesto, California, which is about an hour inland from San Francisco and an hour from Sacramento as well. And I teach at a high school, and I teach not just guitar. I teach orchestra. I teach music technology. I teach 2 periods of guitar, and also after school rock band, which is modern band actually, which kind of ties into some of my guitar class and some of my guitar students. I also teach 1 period of piano, and I teach 1 period of Spanish because they needed a Spanish to be taught, and I have a teacher credential in Spanish as well. So got my hands kind of busy here.
Extraordinary, Mark. I just love what we've got, the expertise and experience that we have represented on this call. So I'd like to jump in now to kind of the meat of this conversation. The meat of this conversation is I guess nominally about how do we engage with our community through our guitar classes? How do we find opportunities for the kids that are in our guitar classes to do things that are meaningful to the community, that are meaningful to them? How do we contextualize that music learning? And with that contextualization, have the opportunity to build all kinds of things, and I want to talk about what those things are, because it's what I've certainly observed over the years is that when kids get up to doing cool stuff, amazing things happen. They become more interested, more motivated, excited about what's going on, and it reaches to places maybe beyond what we could have thought possible when we first started thinking about teaching a guitar class and thinking about curriculum or fingers or note literacy or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve when we first imagine what a guitar class can be. So I'm gonna start out of the gate, and then I'm gonna kind of ask you guys to help with a little analysis. And then I'm going to throw it over to George, and then Mark, and then Eric to each chime in. And so the first thing that I want to show everybody is just a picture from yesterday. And this actually 2 pictures from yesterday. And these happen to be from our district's all city and all region guitar events. So this particular photo here is that looks like me. And I'm conducting a group of 18 middle school students that are actually from about 5 different middle schools. And then in a second, we'll see another photograph of, oh boy, that's another one of me. Thank you, Eric, for that beautiful shot. And then this picture here is Joe Williams, who's our artistic director at ACG, conducting a group of 20 high school kids from All Region High School. And so the reason this is significant is because these are 2 of the 4 ensembles that performed last night. The other 2 were called All City Guitar and All City Middle School. So All City Middle School, All City High School. I had All Region. Joe had All Region Middle School and High School. And so the All City ensembles had 60 or more players in each one. Joe and my ensembles had 18 and 20 players in each one. And these are all audition-based citywide contest that happens once a year. And this is pretty common from what I understand for band and orchestra to do, but there aren't too many communities that are doing this kind of a thing with guitar. And so why is this cool? Well, let's talk about that just a little bit. So first of all, the what is that this is all city, or like a citywide festival, let's call it. So I'm gonna write that up here, city festival. And so a city festival is something that is achievable. Your district can support it or it can be something that an individual teacher decides to host or run. We have some colleagues in Houston, for example, that have really almost unilaterally done this from a position in one high school and then gotten kind of a lot of synergy surrounding it. And then, so when you think about it, we've got, okay, kids are auditioning to be part of this city festival. And so when we think about who is affected by something like this, obviously the first thing we think of is the kids themselves. But George, I'm going to throw this one over to you for my first question of the day. And that is for the third category of how. Can you think for a second? I mean, how are the kids that participated in an all-city or all-region event in Austin last night, how are they affected? What does that do for them as they get engaged in something like that, would you say?
Well, I think there's a couple things that it does, but especially for, from the kids' standpoint, it validates their work, their day-to-day work, because they're able to get among their peers and show the work that their works that they've accumulated or what they've worked toward and process. And that's a really important fact in making something real to a student.
I just love that. And so I've written down validates, and I went ahead and wrote down peers as well, because that idea of sharing with others, the power of social learning in general, is just such a profound thing that we're seeing with guitar classes, kind of broadly speaking. Mark, maybe I'll throw it over to you. You can think of any other way that kids might be affected by the opportunity to participate in like an audition process in a citywide festival like this?
It'll make them practice harder and perfect their music, not just get the notes right, but make it like own it.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of ways to capture that. I wrote down motivating. You said practice harder. It's a goal. You put a goal out there and you want to go and achieve that goal. And I heard, I had one young man in my ensemble last night who wanted to know what, if they were supposed to sit in the order of the ranking that they had received from the audition. Of course, it turns out that he was pretty high up in the order of the ranking. And so I think he was interested in having his seated position reflect the ranking that he had got. But all that means really is that it kind of reflects this idea of motivation. Now, I know we could go on and talk more about the.
Hello?
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 Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear him anymore.
Yeah, he's gone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm still here, but I think Matt's gone.
I guess we'll wait for a moment.
Oh,
There he is.
I'll be back.
There you go.
Sorry about that, guys. So we'll stop there with that particular thing. But what I'd love to do is get one more who up there. And Eric, I'm going to throw this over to you now. So we're talking about a citywide festival. We've said kids are affected by this. Who else is affected by something like this that you can think of, Eric Mann?
Well, certainly parents. It's an opportunity for them to see their kids when they don't typically see the everyday work they're doing, and other family members. There's younger siblings, of course, that see something they can work toward in the future.
There we go. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about, parents. I got so much amazing feedback last night from parents that were so excited by what their kids had done. Turns out that we'd had a pretty good rehearsal on Tuesday night, I guess, because parents came after the concert last night and talked about how excited their kids were when they got home. So it was kind of motivating. Obviously, to do a festival like this means that they participate with somebody that they haven't participated with before, like a guest clinician, and that can be kind of an exciting thing, assuming that the guest clinician is
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Oh, it's still broadcasting.
Yeah.
Can you hear it? You can hear my voice?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, our audio's dying here. Or our video, rather.
Yeah, we can hear you though.
Okay. So, yeah. So, assuming that the clinician is a great one, then we can see that that kind of excitement happen with the kids participating with somebody new as well. So I don't know. For me, this all seems honest on one level kind of obvious, but on another level totally profound. Because one of the giant pain points for a lot of teachers, for example, is motivation of kids in the classroom, motivation to practice, motivation just to kind of behave well within each class period. And so when we're talking about things like parents engaging and witnessing with an event like this, or we're talking about a goal or motivation to practice, that actually isn't just a icing on top of the cake. That is actually a core element that's going to make a classroom a more successful kind of an experience for people. So we lose me again. So that's going to be a core element that's going to keep us motivated in the classroom. So let's go ahead and head over to Mark. And maybe Mark, you could give us an example of some kind of an engagement that you've seen in your classrooms.
Mm-hmm. So definitely preparing for an event where it's not just you guys playing will motivate them to play, to really own the piece. And it's fun to encourage them and kind of challenge them, say, hey, we're going to this place in 3 months. And then, hey, we're going to this place in 3 weeks. And then it just becomes more their own. I also do performances around the school, which I think is important to let the school know what we're doing. So sometimes we'll do a lunchtime performance or a middle of the day performance in the library, which has been really great because it's a quiet place, right? I don't want to bring guitars in like the middle of the place, lunchtime, for example, where children are eating and being loud. That's more appropriate for like bigger music, I would say. But we do these library performances, and I invite classes. So I'll send out an email to all my fellow teachers and say, hey, we're doing another classroom library performance at such and such time. And so interspersing, I think, big events with smaller events like that has really helped the kids and me kind of get excited about sharing music with their fellow students. And sometimes they recognize peers from different classrooms that they don't really interact with in a musical way. And I think that's a small stepping stone, but an important one that I've done on the way to some bigger things that I take the kids to. But so yeah, I think that's one thing.
What I love about this example, Mark, is that can you hear me actually?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what I love about this example, Mark, is that it's so achievable, right? We're within the school. We can book the library. We can book the hall. We can do something at lunch. Again, what you're describing is also the importance of it being a quality place to listen, right? So we don't want to do it in like a busy lunchtime cafeteria, but a place where the kids are going to be able to be proud of the performance and share with their peers is super cool. I'm curious to hear from George if this is something that you've also done. I'm imagining that the answer is probably yes. But I also want to note that I've written down 2 new categories of who is affected by this. Right, I've written down other teachers that Mark says that he has invited, and also peers of the kids who might come and see their peers perform. So, George, you got any reaction to that?
Actually, I've not done the library performance, but I'm going to go talk to my librarian tomorrow because that would be a great.
All about.
We've played at different school events, National Honor Society, inductions and just a whole host of things, the Board of Education meetings. But things like that. But I really like the library thing for the simple fact that a lot of the kids, at least in my school, I have there's about 2,000 students in the high school program, or in high school, in McKinley High School, senior high school. And a lot of times, kids will say, I didn't know that there was guitar, and that is a phenomenal tool. I am definitely going to do that, for sure.
So you're actually talking about like a recruiting benefit.
Yeah.
To kind of peers becoming aware that there is a guitar program where maybe they wouldn't have been.
I think, yes, that's for sure. And a lot of times, kids that in my situation, it may be different than everyone else's, but the kids that appeal to the guitar in my school, there's a different kid that appeals to the guitar and maybe necessarily is not in orchestra or band or choir, and so they don't see themselves in that, but they do see themselves as doing something with the guitar. They're drawn to the guitar. I have a lot of students, and I think taking what Mark said, taking that performance out to other parts of the school gives that opportunity for recruitment, gives those kids an opportunity to be able to envision themselves saying, I can do that. That's something I can see my.
Mark, I'm going to throw it back to you and ask, what kind of feedback have you gotten from other teachers or from student peers along these lines?
I've got several positive feedback through email, or when I go back to the library to reschedule another thing, or if I'm just walking through. And, it's a real delight. I might think of it as, I might see all the mistakes, that possible ways that we could have done better, but they don't see all that. And music is there to serve people. And when the librarian is just delighted and all the staff there, and just to see us again, I'm like, wow, we're really giving them something that is quality and something that they don't see in their day, a live instrument ensemble right near them. And I haven't got a lot of student feedback, like random students, but I'm sure that that might be their first experience to hearing any ensemble play live, honestly.
Wow, that's so cool. So it's exciting. I think of, I'm drawing a smiley face next to the teachers here, because I think that is such a powerful result. And maybe perhaps if I were to put a word to it, I would write goodwill. Goodwill next to those teachers as well. I love that you bring up the idea of the next time I go back to schedule it again, the librarian says, oh yeah, you guys, I mean, that was great last time. I can't wait until the next time. And, in my business, where we're part of our organization is an entertainment organization. Part of our organization is social service. Part of it's an education. So much of what we depend upon is that particular fuel. It's the fuel of goodwill. And so when we can bring joy to people, I mean, gosh, that's just what it's all about. So far we've had two examples. One is kind of a big citywide festival that happened to have happened here in Austin yesterday. Another one is there was an audition thing. Another one is Mark's kind of in-school performance, contextualizing and sharing a beautiful idea. George, maybe we can go over to you next, and maybe you could share with us a way that you've gotten your kids out and engaging with the community.
Well, yeah. So engaging with the community, I was mentioned before, but I mentioned here that I like to take my kids. I personally find it really important to get my students on a college campus for the mere fact to get them thinking about their future. And I don't engage. I engage the students in the music department so that they can have an opportunity to interact and be able to play. And I think that's extremely important for the students, because that gives them this validating experience that they belong there, that they have that college is not this abstract thing for someone else. So we just played at the Kent State Guitar Festival, and the kids actually leading up to that, I took them to a university visit to Kent State, and the head of the ensembles and guitar, Aaron Vaughn, held a master class with them. They toured the facility, looked at the program, and I've done this with the University of Akron. And I got to give a shout out to Eric Mann, because he asked us to come up to CIM, and we did that last year, and that was phenomenal. But I just feel real passionate about that, and it helps. I know that's a big, important part for a university to get students on campus. So it's just this really beautiful connection between public education, and higher education.
So George, I'm listening to this. Say I'm a teacher. I haven't done anything like this before. I'm listening to you say this, and I'm wondering, how in the world do you get this done? Like, what is a step that somebody would have to take to get let's say their high school program to be able to actually get onto a college campus? Is this a hard thing to accomplish?
It is definitely not a hard thing to accomplish at all. For me, doing guitar, contacting the person in charge of guitar studies or whatever kind of guitar program is there, they're almost always more than delighted to have a school visit. My principals, the people that actually have to fund the busing and make the time for the kids and getting the lunches together to take with us or arrange. So there's some logistical things, but that you have to take in consideration, but they're all very manageable. But my supervisors absolutely love this. My superintendent loves it. It makes the school look very good. It makes the college campus for their recruitment look good. And I don't feel bad about doing all these things, because it's going to it raises the community up when we raise our education and be able to get kids thinking beyond, if the kid, Canton also is a high poverty rate, beyond their current situation. So
George, I just love it so much, and I'm going to draw one little lesson from this, and then Eric Mann, I really want your reaction to this particular example, because I know you also are involved in this connection of higher education to secondary school, and you're also not far from George, and so I'd love your reaction on just kind of the kinds of effects that this type of a program might have. But the lesson that I want to make sure everybody gets listening to this, the lesson that I want to make sure everybody gets listening to this is that in each of the three scenarios we've talked about so far, there's actually mutual benefit that's happening that is really powerful. So in my case, we had to engage the school district to help us, and we had to engage the teachers to participate and the students to participate. It's great for students because it's motivating. It's great for the district because it's rigorous and because it engages parents. In Mark's case, he was talking about how delightful it is for the librarians who set the thing up. So they're excited that it's happening. Teachers are excited to participate. It's different than their ordinary day. And then, of course, on the other side, it's also a great thing for the teacher because it's motivating for the students. And then in this last case, George is talking about how, it's wonderful opportunity as a teacher to bring students to see a higher education institution, open their eyes to possibilities. And at the same time, it's great for the university because this is recruiting. This is getting kids onto their campuses. And I think we may have lost again here, Eric.
it's great for their campuses because it brings kids to them as well. So Eric, man, I'd love your thoughts on anything you've witnessed with regard to connecting kids to higher ed, or any kind of example you might have.
Yeah, sure. So I might start with I'm going to steal that library idea as well. So thanks, Mark, for sending that one along. Yeah, we do, and just with performances in general, we do a lot of performances, both in school and out of school. Last school year, our students performed more than 50 times, and not all of those were, performances that we specifically organized, but just that these kids have been empowered to do a lot of things. And I also teach at Cleveland Institute of Music, and last March set up a guitar day where students came and studied with faculty at the Cleveland Institute of Music, took some classes, and also one of the classes we set up was by the guitar majors at Cleveland Institute of Music, just talking about what college life is like. And some of them are graduate students that went to liberal arts colleges before they went on to conservatory. So the middle and high school students that came to this, had an opportunity to hear about kind of the whole gamut of, college experience. And I thought it was a pretty neat thing. We haven't done a lot of connections with other colleges, but that's really our next step, is to connect with all the other colleges that are here in the Cleveland area.
One of the things I'm struck by in listening to you talk, Eric, is the importance in engineering events like this, especially something like a college visit or an opportunity to go to a new place or participate in a festival or something like that. I'm struck that it's so important that we take care in making sure the event really is right for them. That we've got people that are going to be qualified to speak to them, that we take into account the kids' schedules, their energy. Do they need a snack or not? I mean, what's their experience going to be like? If they're going to go and perform in the school, as Mark was saying, it can't be in a noisy place where it's going to be a lousy experience. If they're going to go to Cleveland Institute of Music, why don't we get somebody who will talk to them about their experience, so that we're creating the right kinds of experiences for kids, and then the connection is really made. Eric, I want to come back to something that you just described, though, because you kind of glossed over it a little bit, but it's such a huge critical thing. And you said our kids performed more than 50 times last year. And then you said, now, not all of those events were things that we organized, but and to me that almost sounds like, like we can take credit for the things we organize, but we can't take credit for the things that we don't organize. And of course, we all know that credit is not the issue here. But what is the issue in this moment for me is that those events that we don't organize are like free opportunities for us to do community engagement. I love it when an organization calls us and says, hey, we've got something happening. Can you bring kids to perform? And so like an example that just popped into my mind is the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has a leadership program for young Hispanic business leaders called Hispanic Austin Leadership. And it's a 9 months long program. And at the end of it, they graduate. And about 5 years ago, for the Hispanic Austin Leadership graduation ceremony, they came to us and they said, hey, do you have any young Hispanic guitar players in your guitar programs that might want to come and perform for our graduation ceremony for the HAL graduation for Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? And of course, the answer was yes. And we've been perennial performers now for the HAL graduation for the last 5 years. And it's turned into wonderful opportunities for our kids to perform, turned into a wonderful connection with the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And that's an event that we don't organize, but we're able to kind of hitch our wagon to it in those moments and give an opportunity for our kids to play. So, Eric, can you think of an example? Like, what would be one of those situations, not, in the not too distant past, where kids from your programs have performed in an event where you weren't the sole owner or organizer of that event?
Yeah, sure. I mean, many of these events are not things that we organize. There are Martin Luther King Day performances at some of the major venues in Cleveland where our kids have been asked to play. They played at Family Theater Day at Playhouse Square, which is really actually a huge event. I mean, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has a Rock Your World festival the kids played at, and also some of our kids are even playing at a whole bunch of performances that I never even learned about, because they're getting connected to all kinds of other things, and getting asked to play. And I try to tell them, hey, let me know if you're performing at something, but many times I find out that they're just doing all kinds of stuff, playing in the church services.
Necessarily engineer, or you might not even know about it until after the fact, and it's kind of like the horses out of the barn, and it's just so exciting when it happens.
Yeah.
So I've got another category of event now. So we've talked about kind of 4 categories of events. So one is like local events that we didn't organize. One is visits to colleges. One is in-school performances, which we'll kind of lump into a category now. And then another one is this sort of citywide student audition music festival situation. I'm sort of kind of making a little list of these now. Something else that happened actually just this week in our community was the National Association for Music Education, and NAFME, had a national conference in Dallas. And one of our high schools, Travis High School, directed by Susan Rosance, auditioned to become a showcase ensemble. They won the audition, and then they were able to raise the money to get the buses to go to Dallas. And on Monday, just this past week, they went up there and they performed at the National Association for Music Education as part of their as a showcase performer for that event. And so this kind of brings us to another category then. This is like a festival or a contest, or in this case, a large national conference where we have the opportunity to give our kids a big goal to go for. The audition is a goal in and of itself, and then to win the audition and go and perform is a big deal. So I'm curious, Mark, George, or Eric, if any of you have kind of stories related to that. George, I think you were actually just talking about a festival not too long ago, or you were talking about the festival at Kent State. But so did any of you have like a conference or festival or competition story from the not too distant past?
Well, we just the week before last, as I was saying, my kids we visited a college leading up to the festival, and the kids took part in a master class with one of the visiting artists. We're in the classroom with them for 2 days, and then they performed that weekend at the festival, and it was a very big deal for them. And it wasn't as large as the NAFME convention. It was really, really great.
How did you get to decide who played in the master class, George?
I actually selected 2 of my ensembles, or 2 of my classes, my ensembles, to take part in that. I couldn't. The festival wouldn't accommodate all of my classes.
You have to choose. But so I've thrown festivals up here as another category, and now of course my different little categories are getting messy because the festival doesn't exactly correlate now to the who column, but you added something to the how, and just now, George, and that is this idea of instruction or master classes. which also involves the opportunity, to meet advanced players, maybe even famous people, which are really motivating things for kids, especially if they're prepared for it and they're excited about it.
Well, I think the important thing with that, and for the event that Eric put on that we were at last March, was it validates this instrument, the guitar, is a passport as a key to connecting worlds. From what the kid's being seen as a student to actually being seen as a musician. Those are two different things in a kid's mind. So,
George, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to make you say that again because it was a beautiful statement and I'd like to underscore it.
So, like, I believe having those experiences validates the student. It's like a transformation from the student. The child knows they are a student. They're going to school. They're taking instruction, and having this experience through the guitar, being a vehicle, a passport, as you will, to being a musician. So there, we're on this common road. We're just at two different points on the road, and it's great teacher-student passing off to the future. So.
Wow. Yeah. It is just such a beautiful thing for us to think about. And it's one of those kind of solemn and powerful. It's the reason we're having this whole discussion, because on the surface, it may look like we're trying to schedule things for our kids to do throughout the year. And sure, that's a piece of it, but something so much bigger is happening. And we're really missing out if we aren't creating these opportunities, because these opportunities help our kids feel like musicians. And when we think about some of these things like validating and sharing with peers and motivating, engaging, having parents witness it, creating goodwill within the community, recruiting is something for the higher ed folks. But everything else up above that is really could be encapsulated in this sense of what it feels like to be a musician, to be actually communicating with your work. And we get those feelings once in a great while in the classroom. We make music in the classroom. Hopefully we make beautiful music in the classroom, but it's when we share it. It's when that music finds purchase in the community that kind of it all makes sense. It's almost like the cycle of life of music and art is complete when we have that opportunity to share it and engage with others. I've got another category I'd like to talk about now, even though I'm running out of space on my little flip chart here. And the next category I'd like to talk about is kind of off the wall creative engagements. And Eric, man, I'd like to start with you on this one. Could you say a few words about Brighter Days and share with us kind of what that was all about and kind of what came out of it?
Sure. So Brighter Days came out of a program that our director of education, Brian Galdino, was teaching over the summer. And it was a bunch of creative kids who came together. It's a program, our first collaboration with the Center for Arts Inspired Learning. And in this program, kids learn their art form and they actually get paid to do so. They also learn job skills and so forth. It's for high school students. And I think actually, this really wasn't something that was planned in any way. But it speaks, I think, to Brian's character in sort of how he facilitated this. So he brought in a guitar trio that I'd heard him teach to other classes. And the kids decided they liked it. So they started doing all kinds of stuff to it. They had a hip hop beat. There were a couple good singers in there. One of them's a great songwriter, and she just started writing lyrics to it. And then they ended up collaborating with another group that was studying filmmaking, and they made a music video out of it. And I'd be happy to share that with everybody as well. Although I'm not sure if Matt, are you still here? You are. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm back. I was just turning my flip chart page here. Eric,
Hey,
it's just
Matt,
so
this is
incredible.
Bill Ash.
And Mark and George, if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to do it, and anyone else watching as well, to kind of look up. How are we going to find it on Google, Eric? Just Brighter Days and Cleveland Classical Guitar Society?
Well, we just kind of got the finalized version with all the logos and stuff. I think you can just look it up on YouTube. Let me make sure it's on our YouTube channel here.
Brighter Days, and if you look up Cleveland Classical Guitar and Brighter Days, that's how I find it when I look for it, which I do frequently because it's so unbelievably amazing. And it's kids talking about things that are important to them, kind of geopolitical issues and sociopolitical issues. And they've written this amazing song. All of the underlying kind of melodic and harmonic material is made on their classical guitars. The video is of them playing. It's a bunch of kids. There's singing, there's rapping, there's singing in harmony, and it's so incredibly expressive. And the thing that I love about this so much, well, there's so many things, but it's that the kids have such profound ownership of what they're producing in this particular case. And so what I've written on my little flip chart behind me is creative engagement, which is kind of a huge, broad term, but it's this chance to do something cool. So a chance to have kind of ownership and agency around the artistic product itself, and to kind of find your voice. And that is such a critical part of music making for all of us, and was, I'm sure, important to everyone here that's on the call throughout our lives. So, of course, there's many ways to do that. And we find that a lot of times in our classrooms and through our traditional music making. But certainly Brighter Days is a particularly interesting example of that. We have a thing that our director does at the Juvenile Detention Center where we teach at Gardner Betts here in Austin, where they'll learn to play a piece of music, but the instructor won't give the piece of music a name. And so they'll play it, they'll learn it, they'll go good at it. And then at the end of the day, the instructor will ask the kids to come up with the name for the piece. And as soon as they have that opportunity, they just have fun with it, right? They all have ideas about what they think it ought to be called. And it's a super simple way of creating some meaningful engagement with something that is obviously a lot less time intensive and budget intensive than making a video and writing an original song. But just that opportunity to name something. Last night when I was conducting the all region middle school ensemble, at one point in the rehearsal toward the end of the second day, I just asked the kids what they wanted to rehearse next. What did they think was the part of the program that needed the most attention? And they all had ideas. And because it was their ideas, they became kind of more invested in it. Mark Davila, I'd love to kind of move over and throw this one over to you because I know you're doing some kind of contemporary band stuff. And I'm wondering if any of this aspect of the conversation is resonating with you, or if you've found situations where kids get really deeply invested because they have an opportunity to have kind of a creative voice on the generative side with this sort of thing.
Sure. So throughout the school year, for each of our 4 main department concerts, we go through the decades. So the first concert will have like 60s and 70s. The next one will have 80s, 1980s music. Then, of course, in the spring, we'll have 1990s. And then to finish out the year, we'll have 2000s and beyond. But one thing that I think that was really cool that we found was that I asked them, can you change the genre of the music without changing the melody or the underlining harmonies of the song? And so they that at first they were kind of like, what, how do we change the song? But for example, we did the Beatles' Little Help from My Friends, and it's kind of a fast song. What would you do if I sang it? It's kind of fast, and they sang it even faster, and it changed into like a fast kind of bright punk song. What would you do if I sang out of key? Would you stand up and walk out on me? They changed the melody a little bit too, so I was like, oh wow, that sounds cool. And so we changed it to like a bright punk song. I don't know if there's any deep meaning behind that other than they kind of made it their own and making cover songs of classics is always kind of fun, I think, and changing a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love this. I love Brighter Days, which is kind of big in concept and it does have that depth to it. My little example of just little techniques in the classroom for giving kids agency over their own decision making. And now Mark, sort of in the middle there, that chance to take a found object and make it your own, maybe through some kind of a transformation, reimagine it in some way. And involvement in that kind of creative process is just so much fun. Eric, do you think we can pull up that 360 video that we did? So another example that's not a terribly, you know, I don't know that we're going to find a ton of depth in terms of kind of social meaning in that sense with this particular example, but it was an incredibly fun and motivating, one-of-a-kind idea that just kind of popped into our minds one day. And when it did, it gave us a chance to do something cool that the kids are never going to forget. And so I'm going to see if Eric can kind of pull it up here and show it to everybody that's watching. So I'll just let us watch it for a while. This is a 360-degree video that we did on top of the Art Museum downtown in Austin. Okay, thank you so much, Eric, for playing that for us. We had so much fun doing that. That one's, of course, on YouTube as well, and on the Austin Classical Guitar channel. And it's the kind of thing where the kids had to memorize their music in order to do that. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. You know, they got motivated. They threw out their own ideas for where we ought to shoot it. And then we ended up on the rooftop of the Art Museum downtown. And it's just a fun project. And that's something that could be a collaboration with the AV club in the school, or something that, you know, in our case, we had a company that had a 360 camera and they were looking for ways to try it out. And so they, so this is what they did. George, maybe George, I think we've talked to Mark and Eric about this particular topic. Have you had any kind of experiences with kids getting creatively engaged and generating something?
Oh yeah. Yeah, actually I've had like a different take on it. Out of my group, I've had oh boy, a few groups kind of spawn out on their own and take you know, I had a group of kids that in my advanced class decided to make a trio, and now they're putting together music because they want to go out and do their own thing. So things like that. In one of my classes, and this brings me back to what Mark and you were talking about. We've just kind of finished playing part of the curriculum, the Koi under Moon Bridge, and so there's a strong little group in section 3 that is rewriting all the parts. So they're moving things around on the instrument, from putting their part on the high, from the higher string down on the lower string, and things like that. We also, the one thing I wanted to add real quick, our local cable provider, we have a cable community access, and they've asked us to come on, and we've played for different things. I know we had a video of our performance airing over the holiday seasons of some of our holiday music, where they would play it throughout in between whatever the programming is. So that's another thing I feel like is a good resource to reach out to, and they're always kind of looking for content, that sort of thing.
You know, that's such a great point, George. I'm so glad you brought it up, because like, for example, this coming Monday, our youth orchestra is going to go down to KUTX, which is a local radio station, and they're going to have an opportunity to record an interview there and play one piece at 9:30 in the morning on Monday. And media loves this. I mean, they love to see kids doing cool, refined, beautiful, polished things. It's something that the papers are interested in. It's something that the media is interested in. It's something that parents get to send to grandparents. And it's something that administrators at schools get excited about as well. So we've only scratched the surface on creative engagement up here with this idea of making videos. Eric's example of Brighter Days, Mark's examples of doing some kind of more modern music, or doing arrangements of things. What George was just talking about was small groups that get together, get creative, maybe rewrite some music, want to go out on their own and do stuff. And then George just talked about media. Something we haven't yet talked about, but I wanted to make sure and talk about, is I know that in my organization, because we have concerts that happen all year long, almost every single concert begins with a student performance. And if it's a big concert in a big hall, then I have a big group of kids performing from one of the schools. If it's a small concert in like a house or something, then maybe I'll have a soloist go and play. On the other sheet that I was, the first flip chart sheet, I had kind of the what, the who, and the how. And it's important to think of, when we have a pre-concert performance for an organization like mine, which works in the community and raises money and stuff, that part of the who that's affected by that middle category when you do a pre-concert performance is your donor base, is your audience, is the general public that just gets so excited about stuff like this. So this is the last time you're going to see this page right here. But if you're taking notes, then I would write down media, I would write down pre-concert shows, I would write down creative engagement. Those are the three on this page. And then if we go over to the first page, you've got citywide festivals or audition type situations. We've got large festivals that you can go maybe perhaps and travel to in your area. We have things within the school that are creative community engagement opportunities. Maybe there's a local college in your area, or multiple colleges that would love to have your kids come and visit, play, interact with some of the faculty. And then Eric helped us to kind of think about some events that maybe other people are having. I mentioned the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that was looking for performers and has turned into a wonderful opportunity as well. But the real roll-up of all of this discussion is that that there's opportunities all around us to do cool stuff, and some of it takes a lot of effort, some of it takes some money to produce, a lot of it does not. A lot of times, if you haven't created a lot of opportunities like this for your programs, you'll be maybe perhaps surprised at how excited people will be when you approach them about these opportunities, because it's really a lot about goodwill. And it seems like most members of the community or the media or within your school or outside of your school are going to be excited to participate in something like this. So I'm going to go in this order. I'm going to go George, and then Mark, and then Eric, and maybe just kind of have a last closing thought about this. Maybe thinking from the realm of sort of advice or personal experience, things that's, you know, kind of a closing thought you might have for people that have been with us through this and have seen these different categories and heard some of your stories. So, George, let's start with you. Maybe just a kind of a closing thought for folks.
Yeah. So first, I just want to say thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure being a part of this. I really appreciate this. And I love the ideas that I heard. But a closing thought, as far from my perspective, is I would say don't limit yourself, the scope of what you perceive your role as. Always be open to new opportunities, and don't get intimidated by new opportunities. I think a lot of people we all share common interests in seeing the children develop into our positive future, and just kind of be open-minded and take it one step at a time, and don't get overwhelmed. So
Wow, George, that's such amazing advice. And you dropped something in there that we could almost spend an entire evening just talking about. And that is that sense of recognizing common purpose. We do have a lot of common purpose, we human beings, that is. And one of those common purposes that almost all of us share is the desire for the kids in our communities to have the best possible opportunities that they can have. We delight in seeing kids excel. And if we can really kind of stand in that common belief and that common interest and really communicate from that place, then we do often find a lot of consensus, and that turns into these kinds of opportunities we've been describing tonight. So beautiful, George. It's such a pleasure having you on. Let's talk to Mark now, and get a closing thought or two from Mark.
One thought, something that I'm doing but trying to do more of is every class period, I have the goal as a side goal to have the students contribute in some way to the style, or even sometimes the rhythm, if we've already dominated a piece of music or adequately learned it, is to have them think about the music, what they're playing, and then possibly change it. How should we play this? Should we play this way? Should we play that way? Often I'll have to give them a little example of what different ways are to play it. Maybe Ponticello, or should we have a little breath mark here? In other words, before this note or something. So I try to give them that, and that's something I learned through going to the guitar training during the summer in Austin, is to every class period try to have them contribute in some way to the artistic or musical aspect of the piece we're working on.
Mark, that's so awesome to hear. And what you've just reminded us of is that this idea of creative engagement isn't just something that we relegate to the planning of a big event for them to go do, or the planning of a particular lesson plan, but it's actually something for us to try to have rolled into every single class period. This idea of agency, ownership, voice. We don't have to create a Brighter Days video in order to find that in a little way in every single class period all the time. So that's just awesome. And thank you for sharing that. Eric, how about you for a little closing thought?
Yes. So I would say two things. One is, a common theme that's coming up a lot is creating those really great performance opportunities. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're prestigious events, but kids really step up to that, and you never know what they're gonna produce, and also finding opportunities for kids just to have a chance to be creative and to step outside of your lesson plan sometimes and give them a chance to roll with something can create some pretty amazing results.
Wow, Eric. Well, I can't thank the three of you enough for the work that you do for the kids in your community, and for contributing the way that you do to our national conversation, not just tonight, but through your presence, broadly speaking, in our music world. I can't wait until we're all able to be here together again. Huge giant thanks to you for participating. Huge giant thanks to everyone who's watching this, and a special thanks to Eric Pearson here, who's our director of curriculum, and who's been making sure that every time my mic goes out, it comes back on, and that we get to all stay connected. So Eric, thank you. Thanks to all for being on the call, and we'll do this again sometime soon.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks again.